this video, I want to answer the question, what is Float? Or, if you prefer, what is Slack, not the software? Float is schedule flexibility. It's the amount of time a project activity can slip without having an adverse effect on another scheduled activity. Float and Slack are two different names for the same thing. Or nearly. Some people reserve the term float for the amount of time an activity can overrun before it has adverse implications. They use Slack to refer to the amount of time that you can delay the start of an activity without having adverse implications. However, these two things amount to exactly the same thing. So it's no wonder that most of us use the terms Slack and Float completely interchangeably. Free float is the term we use for the amount of time that a scheduled activity can slip before it has an adverse effect on a successor activity. As a result, free float is also sometimes known as activity float or task float. We calculate free float by taking the earliest start time for the successor activity and subtracting the earliest finish time for the prime activity. Total float is the amount of time that a scheduled activity can be delayed without affecting the finish time of the whole project. Some people therefore refer to it as project float, but as we'll see, that term also has another meaning. We calculate total float as the latest finish minus the earliest finish for an activity, or as the latest start minus the earliest start for the activity. Although some people refer to total float as project float, the term project float has another meaning. Some people use the term project float to denote the amount of time a project can be delayed without affecting the customer, the user, or the stakeholders who are reliant on the project. There's also such a thing as negative float. If your project will be delayed, this is the time between when you can finish a task and when you need it to be finished to assure completion on schedule. The idea of float arose from the development of the critical path method. The critical path is the longest path through a project network. We have videos on the critical path method and its close relative, the PERT method. All activities on the critical path should have zero float unless you decide to schedule in float as a deliberate mechanism to mitigate the risks of delay. So to end, why do we care about float? Why is it an important project management concept? Well, there are four primary reasons, and the first is about risk. Where you have less float, you have more risk of schedule delay. As a result, we sometimes choose to build in float as a mechanism to mitigate risk. It's also about prioritization. You need to allocate your resources and your management attention to the tasks and activities where there is least float. The critical path activities which have zero float are the highest risk activities, and therefore you need to prioritize them by providing the best resources, the most resources, and the most management attention. As a result, float is also about monitoring and project evaluation. You need to keep a close eye on low float activities. And finally, float is about team morale. If all of your project activities have zero or very low float, it creates a huge pressure of multiple deadlines on your project team. By introducing float, you can ease some of that pressure and therefore raise morale. It creates more time for creative thinking and innovation. And it also gives people a chance to relax and recharge their batteries so that they can come to work ready and enthusiastic for more work. In a constant zero float environment, people are rushing from one deadline to another without any time to think, without any time to recover their energy and their mental awareness. So, float or Slack is an important project management concept. But for those people who think of it as highly technical because of its association with the critical path method, don't worry. The idea is simple, but it is one that's worth understanding. Please do give this video a like if you've enjoyed it or learned from it. I'll be creating loads more great project management videos for you, so please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of them. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.